Hey guys, it's Out of Darts. Today we are doing the first video in my Crystal Clear Mod Guides series, which is a new series I'm starting. And the purpose of this series is to create videos that are extremely easy to view, follow, watch, and hopefully mod. I'm doing these videos really for you guys because I feel like even when I'm looking around for good tutorials, I have a hard time finding them these days. Today's subject is the BoomCo M6. I love this blaster, and it's a really pretty straightforward mod, but it's a little bit tricky to open. Now I have to thank right off the bat, Zombona is the one that got me started on these. He actually sold me the first one that I ever had, and because I was a little bit afraid to open this up. And so I thought I would do a video and show what I've learned, because I've modded about 100 of these now. I do sell these on my shop completed, both like this with a K26, custom spring that I made, and also with the guard cut off so it fits in a holster. Additionally, I will also be having those holsters for sale in the near future. So let's see, what color? I think we're gonna go green today. There's also a blue one out there somewhere. So to complete this mod, you're gonna need a few things. You're going to need a hot glue gun. You're going to need pliers. I like to have a cutting utensil around. You're going to need at least one dart. You're going to need a K26. This one is my 4-inch pre-cut, ready-to-go K26 with flat ends. It makes it so much easier to install. These are $4 on the shop. And then you're going to want hole punches or gunsmithing punches. And these are the roll type. You can get the flat type as well. Now, if you don't have one of those, you can also use an old lousy motor. I think this one came from, oh, I don't know, it might have been a Rapid Strike or a Strife. I can't really say. But anyway, this will work as well, and we use this to get the pin out. So, in addition, you're also going to want a hammer to hit this pin with, and that basically does it. That's everything you need. I should say you also need a screwdriver, of course. Now, so I will clear this all away, and we'll get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut this guy open, and I like to just really quickly slit all of these. And the reason I still have this in the packaging, because I'm not that into unboxing videos. I think they're not that interesting for me, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this roll punch, we're gonna put it here, and we're gonna give it a good tap. And what that'll do is punch it right out through the other side. You'll now have the roll punch out, and we're gonna set that aside. And we can set this away. Keep in mind, you will need one of these darts. I've got one ready to go. After you've got the pin out, you're going to take a Phillips #1. Now, I prefer to save my wrist and use this little electric guy. I think these guys are really fast. Makes it a lot quicker to get these out. Additionally, there's another screw back behind here. Get that now or later. Now at this point, we've got the most difficult part we're going to do, and that's removing this slide. This slide is in two parts, which need to be split apart. Now I have found it easiest to brace this edge against a table, like so, or on an edge, like if my hand is the edge of the table, like this, and put positive pressure against this, and then carefully split here. Now, this is the most challenging part of this mod because you will break the blaster if you are not careful. So I will go ahead and do this. I'm, again, pushing the front of the blaster down, and I'm going to pull these apart. I'm pushing the front of the blaster down because that allows the leverage to be a little stronger versus if those pieces overlap. You will feel like you're going to break it, but you're generally not. I break about 1 in 20 now. Now, there are two ways from here to actually finish this mod. The first is to take this slide completely off, which involves just pulling gently. You can also use a spreader, but you want to be really careful because it's easy to break this part here that holds these together, and they are just pressure fit. The second option is to split the blaster open from the rear and access all the parts there. Now that is how I do it when I sell these, but unfortunately it's almost impossible to show what's going on inside the blaster while splitting it open from here. So today we are going to remove the shell completely. And I'm going to just take this with my hands and very, hopefully carefully, work it open. So now we're going to take this and we're going to work this open. Sometimes I find that kind of pulling from both sides and rotating a bunch will get those two pins loosened. Now you really do need to be careful because this is the part that will leave you with a blaster that needs a keychain link back here, which isn't that big of a deal. This blaster is only $8 right now on Amazon. They used to be $15 and it seems like they've dropped the price permanently. So if you've successfully pulled that apart, you'll have one side which has been separated from here, and these link just like this. And those we can set aside for now. Now we've got one last screw to remove. Now at this point, the blaster is ready to actually fillet open. And I usually take my pliers back here and just use them as a spreader and reverse push just to get that started. Then I sort of shove my pliers in the back and just give it a little twist to help pop this open. You want to be careful not to mar too much of the inside of the shell there. I've gotten pretty good at this, so it goes pretty quickly. But from here, we should now have full access to everything inside. I love how BoomCo blasters are put together. I think this blaster is just beautifully designed. I think the shell is fantastic. And so it's a really kind of neat one to see when you take it apart. Now from here, we are basically ready to go with the mod. We're going to pull out the whole plunger tube assembly. I usually take this part and put it back inside. We are going to pull this part off here, these three parts here, and those are going to go into the garbage. We do not need those anymore. Additionally, we do not need this piece right here. This is the lock mechanism. I do not recommend leaving it in, as Zombona also advised me not to, in the way that he does his mod. So when this is done, there's effectively no restriction or dry firing mechanism, so you don't want to dry fire this blaster when you're completed. So that is garbage. Now from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this off. We're going to pull out the spring. You can see there's the original spring and there's my M6 modded spring. It's slightly longer and a lot more pressure required to put it in. This spring will shoot about 110 FPS, maybe 108 average, something like that, but very good performance while being reasonable to actually install. So we're going to put that back together. Once we've got that done, we're going to take our spare dart. This is a sacrificial dart that's going to go in here. While I'm waiting for my glue gun to heat up, because I wasn't prepared, I thought I would mention how I normally work. I got these little trays at Target, and I just love having one little tray for each build that allows me to sort my screws and my bolt, along with the garbage and reject pieces. I tend to keep these around for a little bit in case I realize that I made a mistake or something later on. And then the other thing I was going to mention is that basically, instead of using those punch pin that I have, you don't need to go buy one of those. You can just use this old motor, and you can push this through the same hole and just tap the back with a hammer. Through this shaft goes all the way through, so you can use it basically as a little punch. I'd also like to make a quick disclaimer. After modding this blaster with my K26 4-inch spring, this is no longer a toy. This thing shoots hard enough to definitely, be uncomfortable for most people. BoomCo shoots a little further and a little harder for the lower FPS, even though this is only around 110. It really has a bit of a sting to it. So I wouldn't recommend playing with this inside, and this is definitely not for children, unless they're supervised, and certainly always wear eye protection. Now that our hot glue gun is ready to go, we will go ahead and we're going to just fill this little void here, and it's basically just going to fill the entire section. You can't go wrong here. If you have a little too much, it's just going to stick out, and there's plenty of room inside the blaster. So we filled that little void, and then I like to come back here, and there's this little notch right here that lines up, and I just put a tiniest dab of hot glue on it. And the reason I do this is it makes it a little easier to insert this back into the blaster. Once this is cooled, we're basically ready to reassemble the blaster. From here, that little notch faces down, and we want to look for the deepest groove here, which needs to face down towards the handle and in line with that. So both the hole and that notch fit there. So we're going to slide. You have to bear with me. I actually don't do this mod this way very often. So we'll slide that on, and we'll slide the whole works back in. Now this is one of the more trickier parts, and you have to have a little bit of finger strength, but I've made this spring exactly as strong as it needs to be. I experimented with about 10 different cut lengths of this to find the right size, and I found that after this length that I sell here, there really wasn't a performance gain. It just made it about 5 times harder to get this in here. Now once you've got this in here, you want to make sure that this little spring here is not going to pop out on you. You want to make sure that the trigger doesn't pop out and can still move. And you want to make sure that everything's in line. And you're going to start by holding this down. I usually just use a finger and making sure that this is in the end, so everything is in line. And then one thing you also want to check here is that this is still in place. You can get to it later, but sometimes it likes to flop inside, and then you won't have your slide return. So basically, when you're here, you're going to slide this back on, being careful to just sort of release your finger just in time to get that back on there. From there, we'll put the second grip plate back on. We'll squeeze everything together. These shells just fit really wonderfully together, and I always enjoy that. Now, before we actually put the screws back in, I always like to grab something and just prime this. Make sure A, that it catches, and B, that the trigger works. Now again, don't dry fire this, so yep, we're good. And my dart just shot across the room despite me doing that. And we're basically ready for reassembly. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put all of the screws back in. Now we've got all of our screws back in and we are ready to put the slide back on. Now again, you're going to want to watch for this little spring here. You need to be able to get to that spring to put this part back through. So we'll go ahead and we will line up this side first. So I will throw this in here. And this is where I like to use an X-Acto knife or anything pointy. This is one of the inexpensive ones that I sell in the shop. I think they're just, a great tool. And you're basically just going to hook this back on the little loop here. And it's kind of hard to see, I think. But once you've got that back on, you're basically good to put the other side on. And you're going to line up this pin with that and this hole or emboss with that one there. And everything should just line up nicely, and it's just pressed to fit. Now we press the slide back together and we are ready for the 2 final screws that go in here. These just hold the slide together, as you can imagine. And last but not least, we have the pin. So the pin goes back in here. And you're going to want to make sure that that can go all the way through. And then generally what I do is if I still have my box around, I just generally use this to pound back on. That way I'm not damaging my table or anything else. Now again, you could use the motor like this, and you can just tap on the motor straight through. You'll ruin the motor probably, but I'm assuming most people have some garbage ones sitting around. But since I do have the proper punch, I will use that. You don't need to hit this any harder than it takes to get it in. And so you're just looking for this to get up to being flush. And I like to not go too hard. I like to make sure I'm not doing any more damage than I need to, or if you hit it too hard, you can pinch the 2 shells together and it'll be harder to prime. At that point, we have successfully modded this blaster. It's got a pretty heavy trigger pull, so you've got to have reasonably strong hands or work up to it as you go. It shoots very hard, and it shoots very far, and it's easily the most accurate Nerf blaster of any type that I've fired. Given that it's not Nerf, of course, it's BoomCo. These straws are, they just fly a lot more stable, and it's really a fun blaster to play with. Now, as I mentioned before, I also do sell these on the shop. And I sell a version where I have cut this for you, so the guards are off if you want these cut. The reason I do this terrible thing to a lovely Halo product, and I am a big Halo fan, I played ages, tons of Halo back in the day, at least 1 and 2, but I will be selling these tie gear holsters in the next week and a half, and these are absolutely perfect fit for this blaster. You can run around all day, they'll never fall out. I've never had it fire. It's also perfectly sized that even when primed, you cannot accidentally fire the blaster. There's just enough space where even if you jam down on this, it's not going to hit the trigger. And that just makes these perfect. And they're very inexpensive. I'm going to have them on the shop. I'll have them even cheaper than they are on Amazon. And they're a heck of a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this first tutorial video. I am very much looking forward to doing more of these in the future. And I would love to hear in the comments, what tutorials do you want to see? I immediately plan to do the Nemesis, the Hera, and then from there, I think I'll start taking suggestions. Now, those next two that I mentioned are considerably more involved and do take a little more planning, but I'm hoping to do about one tutorial video a month because I know people have been asking for them. I'll have links to everything I've talked about in the description, as well as where you can buy these completed and where you can buy my spring. Until next time, I'm out of darts.